the Populist Party and kind of the rise of populism, or political parties that are for the common man. Today we're going to look at the progressive movement. The progressive movement was all about making social changes that would make society better. The progressive movement is a period between 1900 and World War I, so World War I, 1914 to 1918. It is a period of widespread social activism and political reform. These are the reforms that you wrote about on Monday or Tuesday or whatever day it was for your reader's response. The goal of the progressive movement was to address all of the problems that arose during the Gilded Age, issues with industrialization, with urbanization, with political corruption, issues with poverty, alcohol, women's right to vote, and so on. So there's a lot of things that progressives are going to kind of hone in on. Leading the progressive movement, or kind of the beginnings or the roots of the progressive movement, was the social gospel movement. This comes out of the Second Great Awakening. It is where a particular section of the country believes that it is their Christian duty to take care of social problems, things like child labor, safer working conditions. They really emphasized that it was a Christian duty to take care of your neighbors, to take care of other people, and that's kind of the foundation of the social gospel movement, the reason that these people took up these causes. This is mostly Protestants, although other denominations or other parts of the Christian religion kind of join in with this movement. Out of the social gospel movement, we also get the temperance movement, which I can't remember if it's in this particular PowerPoint or not, but the temperance movement is a movement by kind of the same group of women, mostly women, that are fighting for prohibition of alcohol. Okay, so they believe that a lot of society's issues come from the fact that people are drinking too much. They're drinking too heavily. Men are going and getting drunk in the bars and then going home and beating their wives. They're not taking care of their children. There's this kind of social stigma around the consumption of alcohol. So these two things kind of happen at the same time. A movement towards addressing society's issues based on Christian values, and a movement to prohibit the sale and consumption of alcohol, also based on Christian values. At the same time, yeah. Yep. So at the same time, or in conjunction with the social gospel movement, there is a section of the country that is pushing for socialism. Now, socialism is an economic system in which the people work, they pay into a social, like a tax system, and then that system takes care of the needs of everyone. Think about, education, healthcare, there's other social programs that are included in socialism. Socialists believe that the government should take care of your take over basic industries, things like your railroad, your telephone, telegraph, oil, things that the public is in need of. They also believe that collectively as a society, we should be taking care of each other. We should be working not just for ourselves, but for the greater good of everybody. That gives me an opportunity to pause. Ms. Fletcher took some time out for you all to write different economic systems, ideologies, and systems of government on the board. Somebody also did a nice portrait of me back there. So at some point, maybe when we're done, if you want to take a picture of that, you want to copy that down, that is there for you all, and we're not going to erase it until we absolutely have to. The difference between socialism and communism, because both of these get used kind of interchangeably, or people believe that socialism will lead to communism. Communists believe that the working party or the working class should be in control of everything. So there's a bit of a difference between these two economic systems. Leading the way, kind of being the forefront of the progressive movement, is muckrakers. A muckraker is an investigative journalist. They are a person who goes out and they find the problems in society and then they expose them. They're going to expose all kinds of stuff, and we're going to look at individual muckrakers here in just a minute. But they go out and expose child labor, they expose poor living conditions, they expose homelessness, sanitation issues, businesses, corruption in politics, lynching, issues that immigrants are facing, basically all of the social problems that exist at the time.
Attention jackets. The JBH shuttle leaves in 6 minutes. Please proceed to the back horseshoe.
All right, there's a couple of these muckrakers that the state of Texas says you have to know, and I'm going to tell you each one to make sure you write it down. You need to know Jacob Riis. Okay, Jacob Riis is a photographer. He goes into the tenements in New York City where, and I'm going to show you here in a minute what that looks like. He goes into the tenements and he takes pictures of the immigrants' living conditions and the children and how kind of cramped and unsanitary these living conditions are, and then he publishes them in a book called How the Other Half Lives. How the Other Half Lives was essentially, it's actually called How the Other Half Lives and Dies in New York City. It was meant to expose what it was like to be a poor immigrant family living in New York City, working in New York City, to expose that to the rest of the country, to people who maybe weren't living in the area, or more importantly, to wealthy people who were kind of out of touch with that, and to politicians to create change. Once you expose a problem in society, people start talking about it. People start being kind of activists for whatever the cause is. So his journalism is going to lead to some changes in housing, like regulations, ensuring that, homes have things like windows and air conditioning or some kind of ventilation. Not air conditioning yet, it's still 1900. But heat, access to clean running water, plumbing, that kind of stuff. So these are some of his more famous images. These are immigrant children in a fire escape or near a fire escape in New York City. And this image shows kind of the poverty, right, that these kids are living in. We can look at this picture and see that these children have no shoes. Their clothes are too small, if they even have on enough clothes. It appears that it's probably cold, just based on the fact that they're wearing jackets and hats, but they're not bundled up and warm. They're kind of exposed in this, little space. This next one is an immigrant mother who is taking care of her children while also, or her baby, while also doing her job. She's a laundress, which means she washes the clothes for people in, I think this one is in a particular apartment building that she does the laundry for them. And it kind of shows the conditions, not only her working conditions, but the plight of women who have to work, but also have to take care of their kids. There's no such thing as the local daycare where you can just go drop your baby off while you go to work. So this creates an issue. Not all women have to work, but women who do have to work to take care of their families also have to do double duty. This photo becomes famous. I would say the most famous of Jacob Riis's photographs. This is a tenement, and this is the entire inside of this apartment. Tenements were usually very small, maybe 8 by 10 or 10 by 10 rooms with no amenities. Okay, you don't have a kitchen, you don't have a bathroom, you don't have running water. Everybody just kind of cramps into these little spaces. A lot of times these immigrant families, and this is still true today, immigrant families or single immigrant people would live together in one single apartment or one single tenement so that they could just really afford to live. They didn't make enough money for each of them to have their own tenement and also take care of themselves. They would often have little like wood burning stoves that they could cook food on. But as you can tell by this, I mean, it's very cramped living conditions, and it's highly unsafe in these conditions, because if there is a fire in that building, too many people would end up being trapped. This is another one of an immigrant family with a mother and a father and their 5 children. All in one single tenement. This is the entirety of their apartment. These photographs exposed a side of living in New York City that the average person probably wouldn't see. Unless you were an immigrant, unless you lived in a tenement, likely you weren't seeing this part of New York City. This puts pressure on local governments to address these housing issues. Second, we talked about her yesterday, I believe, or the day before, Ida Tarbell. Ida Tarbell writes the history of the Standard Oil Company, in which she exposes Rockefeller and the Standard Oil Company, how they go in and monopolize, take over really local oil companies, or force those companies to sell to Rockefeller. This exposes the kind of corruption of big business on a broader scale. Again, raising awareness, because the more people are aware of an issue, the more people who will likely be activists for that particular issue. She writes a book, or kind of like an essay. I wouldn't say it's like a whole book like you would think of a book. It's an essay that basically runs through how Rockefeller's company would go into communities and threaten smaller businesses into selling to him. So they would go in and they would say something like, you know, if you sell your company to me, I will ensure that all the people who work for your company keep their job. That even if that company was not looking to sell, even if that company was very successful and wanted to keep their own business profits. If that company refused to sell, then Rockefeller would tell them, okay, well, we're gonna come in here, and if you refuse to sell to us, we're gonna basically compete with you until we put you out of business, and then all of the people that worked for you no longer have a job. And so companies would feel stuck because they want their employees to be working and have money and have a job. At the same time, they were not all interested in selling their business. And he did this pretty much all over the country. I mean, Rockefeller had probably one of the biggest monopolies in American history. Well, for the time. Because now if we looked at how much his company was worth, it's probably not anywhere close to some of the bigger companies we have now. You can skip him. Lincoln Stevens, you don't have to write him down. I will tell you, he writes The Shame of the Cities, in which he exposes political corruption, big businesses paying off politicians, political machines, that kind of stuff that we talked about last week. You also don't have to write down Frank Norris, but Frank Norris is the artist who did that octopus cartoon that gets put out in the newspaper, raising awareness to kind of the business tactics of the Standard Oil Company. You do need to know my friend Upton Sinclair. He's not really my friend, but Upton Sinclair writes a book called The Jungle. And I know some of you, well, Kylie's not here today, but Kylie had asked about The Jungle the other day. The Jungle is not it's a piece of fiction. It's a fictional book that exposes what's happening in the meatpacking industry. So what happens is Upton Sinclair goes to Chicago, where they slaughter pigs, cows, whatever major animals are being used for food. And he takes notes about the conditions in these meat packing plants or these slaughterhouses. And then he uses that as inspiration to write a book in which he talks about the things that he saw, but in a fictional way to reach a broader audience. What happens as a result of the jungle is that the federal government is forced to deal with the unsanitary conditions in the meatpacking plants. The government is going to pass new regulations, the Pure Food and Drug Act, the Meat Inspection Act. I don't think those are on this particular PowerPoint, but we will write those down at some point. So the government is going to pass regulations where they're going to go in and inspect these meatpacking plants to make sure that the animals don't have tuberculosis, that people are not, urinating in the food that they're fixing to put in a sausage grinder and feed you. We're going to look at some excerpts from The Jungle. You'll get to see kind of the more disgusting things that he talks about, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
What is tuberculosis?
It's like a lung disease that like freezes your lungs and your muscles or something.
Is it more where you like slowly just talking and you slowly become paralyzed?
No, that's ALS.
ALS.
No, that's ALS. Tuberculosis is much faster.
That famous guy's getting it right now. His name's like Eric something. He's in Euphoria. Is it ALS? Can you like really fast at things?
It depends on the person. Adams. Jane Addams is known as the mother of social work. So we think about social work today. People who go out and there's all kinds of social work, right? They help people who have mental illness, people living in poverty, children who are in the system, CPS custody, that kind of thing. What Jane Addams does is she opens a place in Chicago called the Hull House. And the Hull House was a place where immigrants could come, freshly arrived immigrants, maybe they don't speak English, they're in culture shock, right, because they've come from somewhere completely different, a completely different life. And what she does at the Hull House is she helps them to Americanize, she helps them to assimilate. She helps them find jobs, she helps teach them English, she gives them a place to live, helps with childcare so that they could go to night classes to learn English, or they can go to work during the day. She teaches them how to navigate in the United States. She really lays this foundation for what social workers should do, what kind of work people should be doing to help other people. I think of all of the muckrakers that we talk about, the impact of Jane Addams is probably the most lasting, because we still have plenty of people who do the same kind of work in just different capacities. It's very much expanded to all different fields. The Hull House is a settlement house in Chicago. I don't remember how she acquired this. I think she got it, like her dad owned it and he died, but it was this huge house, right? This is not like a little wood frame house that you see in Alvin. This was a huge house in Chicago that she basically converts into a settlement house to provide childcare, to help people learn English, to help them assimilate to American culture, to give them a place where they felt welcome. Because, I mean, when you travel from one country to another, especially if you don't have family in that particular country, it is a lot of shock. Your body goes through a lot of shock. The customs are different, the manners are different, the language is different. Even the way we drive, right? If you went to England, they'd still drive on the wrong side of the road. At least to us, it's the wrong side.
It is really strange. You can see like the videos of people doing like driver's tests in England. It's like the roads are like so narrow. You can only fit one car, and they literally have little spots that you can pull into so other people can pass.
Yeah. So when you move to another country, it's overwhelming, and so this gives immigrants kind of a safe place to help them kind of grow accustomed to American life. Oh, sorry. Okay. Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells, you need to know her. Now, we're going to talk about her a little bit more kind of throughout the next couple of units or the next couple of weeks. But Ida B. Wells is an activist, an anti-lynching activist. What happens to her is that, well, not just her. In the South, after Reconstruction, to kind of maintain social order, we see the rise of the KKK. And what happens with the KKK is they use terror to maintain social order, to maintain the idea that, you know, the plantation owners were here at the top, and then you have everyday average white people, and then you have anybody else, and then black people were at the very bottom of this social chain. And so to maintain that, they used terror, going out and burning crosses, using Molotov cocktails thrown into people's houses. There is a lot of stuff that the KKK does to maintain social order. One of the more grotesque things they do, though, is lynching. And lynching is not just done by the KKK, it's also done by everyday average people who hold these very strong ideas about racial superiority and inferiority. One of her friends owns a grocery store, and he is accused the grocery store, I believe, is like robbed, and then he shoots one of the robbers or something, and he ends up going to jail. While he's in jail, they come and kidnap him. I don't remember all the details. I do remember the grocery store owner shoots somebody else or defends his grocery store, and a mob comes and kidnaps him. Whether that was in jail or whether they kidnapped him from the store, I can't remember. But they come and kidnap him, and they lynch him. And this happens, I'm going to show you in a second. This happens while he's out of town, while she's out of town on another trip. And it really ignites this flame under her, because in the South, people know that these lynchings are happening. In fact, it's a public spectacle. When I show you the picture in a minute, you'll understand what I mean by a public spectacle. People brought their kids to these events. This was like a whole thing. They would go to church in the morning, and then after church, they'd go to the hanging tree. And so...
Oh, so it's like a public execution when they're like, oh, anybody can come.
Yes, except public execution without any crime committed.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's no court that says, okay, you're guilty of a crime, you've been executed. It's a mob that essentially takes somebody.
Where is the legal government? They're on board with this?
Yeah, you couldn't hold a white person accountable for killing a black person in the South. That was never gonna happen. Never. No, not during this time. So yeah, they just kind of let it happen. It was kind of the norm. So she writes about this. And over this period of time, from the end of the Civil War, 1865, until I believe 2000, the year 2000, there are like 3,200 or 3,400 lynchings that happen, and most of them happen in the South. So she wants to expose that, because people living in the North, like living, let's say, up in Chicago up here, they probably don't really know much about it. Or living up in New York City, it's like living in a whole nother universe, even though you're in the same country. So she starts to write about these lynchings that are happening in the South, to try to get the government to pass a law that says you cannot lynch people. Now, to this day, it's 2026, an anti-lynching bill has never been passed. And the reason it's never been passed, according to Congress, is because murder is already illegal. So you didn't need an anti-lynching bill.
Might as well just put the lynching on top of that now.
I mean, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
Give them like a death penalty if they lynch someone.
Not in 1900, for sure. Not in, because of the way that, like, the social hierarchy works at this time period, if you try to hold someone accountable for a lynching, you were seen as like a sympathizer to the black race. And then that's a whole nother, like, social, like, we could go down a rabbit hole you could study this for years, like how the social structure is maintained. So, this is an image of a lynching. When I tell you, like, they went to church and they came out of church and this was what they did on Sunday afternoon. And these things happened pretty frequently in the South. We're going to look at the case of, have any of you all heard of Emmett Till?
Is that he whistled at the?
Whistled at her. Well, yeah, he whistled at her, or he made some comment to this white woman in a gas station, grocery store, whatever, little convenience store, and he's lynched. So lynching is not always hanging. That although this is the most common form of lynching, lynching is also being burned alive. It's also being beat to death. It's also being shot. It is any type of extrajudicial killing, meaning outside of the court system, killing of a particular person, and almost always the victims of lynching are black.
Have you heard that Strange Fruit song?
Yes.
On the Biggies?
Yeah. We might talk about it when we get to civil rights. Here's another one, just to show you kind of the magnitude of the crowds. But these are things that are this is just the way life is.
What are they doing here?
This is another lynching, and I believe this person is burned to death at the tree. Yeah. All right. So what happens as a result, right? We see the beginnings of a civil rights movement. When we talk about civil rights movement in this time period, I'm talking about in its infancy. This is a very baby not baby step approach, but like this is the very, very beginning of what we will know to be the civil rights movement, or the end of the civil rights movement in the 60s. It starts with Ida B. Wells and her anti-lynching, and a guy named Webb Du Bois, Webb Du whatever you want to call him. Together, Ida B. Wells and Webb Du Bois form the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. This happens in 1909, I believe, and this is the very first ever civil rights organization in our country. Webb Du Bois is a academic. He is a very intellectual individual. He writes a book called The Souls of Black Folk. You need to know about this, The Souls of Black Folk. And it described what life was like for African Americans in the Jim Crow South. So when we think about the end of Reconstruction in 1877, and the country has come a long way, the end of slavery, the right to vote, everybody is a citizen, we make a lot of progress, but in 1877 it kind of stops. And it stops for several different reasons. And what gets Reconstruction gets replaced with Jim Crow. So when we talk about racial hierarchies or racial ideology in the South, we're talking about Jim Crow. Jim Crow is legal discrimination. It is legal segregation. It is a racial hierarchy put into law. We're going to look at some of those laws. We're not going to look at all of them. But we're going to look at some of them so you understand when I say racial hierarchy, how is this established through the law? In The Souls of Black Folk, he talks about the talented 10th. And what he calls the talented 10th is the kind of most educated, most intellectual among African Americans. He believes it's their job to essentially go out and, I don't want to say recruit, but kind of teach the rest of the race how to not get in trouble, how to better yourself, how to stay away from getting yourself in like legal trouble, that kind of thing. He really believes that it is the job of these super intelligent black people to bring up the rest of the black race. He is the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard, which is huge because black people are not just let into any college. In fact, Tougaloo, off the top of my head, is the only one at this time, or maybe Tuskegee, at this time period that accepts all African Americans. Very few of the other big colleges accept black students. And he called for immediate equality. Okay, he wants an end to Jim Crow. And he wants the federal government to take up legislation that will guarantee legal equality between the races. On the other side of that is another early civil rights activist by the name of Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington is a little bit different. He does believe in equality, but he believes in something called gradual equality. His kind of big thing was, if you want to be treated equally, that's understandable, but you need to earn it. Go out and get yourself an education, go out and get some vocational training, and then go out and work and prove that you are worthy of being treated equally. So his idea of equality wasn't immediate, wasn't right now. It was more like, we can just prove that we are worth being treated equal if we just do these things. If we get an education, we get a good job, we go out and prove that we are no different than anyone else. These two civil rights, kind of early civil rights thoughts and ideas are very different, and they appeal to different audiences. When we look at the life of Booker T. Washington, he was known to spend his free time with a lot of politicians. Teddy Roosevelt in particular. So it's kind of, I think he tried to play the middle ground. He believed that black people deserved equality, but he also was trying to appeal to the good senses or whatever of politicians. He didn't want to push too hard. He felt if you push too hard, if you do it too fast, then there's going to be too much pushback. It turns out though, spoiler alert, it doesn't matter how slow the civil rights movement moves or how fast they push for change, there's pushback either way. Surprise, surprise. All right. In terms of reform, municipal governments or local governments, reformers are going to replace bosses, those political bosses that run cities like New York, like Boss Tweed. It's going to be replaced with more public-minded mayors, people who are going to be elected into office, who are not taking dirty money, who are not easy to bribe, who are not taking kickbacks. And these local mayors will work to expand city services, sanitation, subways, plumbing, sewage, that kind of stuff, hospitals, police, public schools, all of the things. And in some of these cities, the city will take direct ownership of utilities, things like, not yet home electricity, but that is going to come very soon. But the subways for sure in some cities, water, not sure about the telegraph. So this will be the end of official political machines in the sense that we knew them in the Gilded Age. They're going to take on all different forms throughout the years, but this is an end to Gilded Age political machines. The next reform is state government. So we go from the municipal level to the state level. These three reforms are always difficult for students to understand. So I'm going to do my very, very, very best to explain it to you in the most easy way I know. An initiative. You know what it means to take an initiative, right? Like if you have something you need to do and you take initiative to do it, what does that mean? You take charge, you just do it, right? So at the state level, voters like us can introduce a new bill. We can introduce a new law if we want to address a particular social problem. We can initiate a bill. This gives us a greater voice in the laws that are made or written at the local level or the state level. Laws like you can't have a cell phone in school. Nobody initiated that. That was done by our state legislature. But if somebody would have wanted to, they could have. They could have said, hey, Texas state legislator, we need a law that says students can't have cell phones in schools. Or there is a way. It is called a referendum. So a referendum is you have a law like the cell phone bill that you don't like, okay? The most famous of these that I give the example of every year is Colorado legalizing marijuana, but I'll give you cell phones because either one works. It's currently illegal to have a cell phone or use a cell phone during school hours, right? From 7:20 to 2:50, you cannot be legally on your phone. If you don't like that, that's fine. You can petition the state government to put that issue on the ballot for the people to vote on by popular vote. You can petition the state. I don't know how many signatures you need. It's a lot. But if you can get enough people in the state to sign this petition, you can present the petition to the state legislature and say, in November, when we all go vote for Congress or whatever we vote for in November, we want you to put this issue on the ballot and let us vote on it by popular vote. That's a referendum, okay? You can overturn a law that's already on the books that the majority of the people disagree with through the referendum process. And then lastly is recall. Let's say that Alvin City Mayor, his name is Gabe Adame, okay? Let's say that, I don't know, Gabe Adame does something, and this is completely hypothetical, I don't know the guy, okay? But let's say he does something that is illegal or immoral, and the people of Alvin are outraged. They don't want him in office anymore, but he still has like 3 more years to serve as the mayor. We can have a special election to remove him from office. We can have a special election where we vote as a population on whether or not he should stay as the mayor or be removed. That is called a recall election. This actually happened in California probably a decade ago. I don't remember who the governor was, but they tried to remove him from office. They had a whole recall election. He ended up beating it, like he ended up staying in office, but I don't remember.
Do you know why?
I don't remember. But you can remove an elected official. Now this goes for your city government. This goes for your state government. But I think anything higher than that, anything at the federal level, maybe you can recall senators, I'm not sure. But I know at the federal level, it's all done by impeachment. Okay. Remember that the Populist Party wanted a secret ballot? You got it, okay? When you go and vote, nobody is in that voting booth with you, nobody's intimidating you. You can feel safe that your vote is confidential. Now, I have seen some things recently that I'm not real sure what this means for the future, but the state does keep track of your voting record. So, like I went and voted in the 2024 presidential election, right? I went onto the Brazoria County website and was able to see the day that I went and voted, which was, I thought, real bizarre.
Could you see who you voted for?
You couldn't see who I voted for. You could just see that I voted. I saw that my husband voted.
Oh, you could see other people?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
It was like a whole spreadsheet that you could search. And then I know that here in the last couple of months, the federal government has asked that states turn over their voting data, which is like your individual. I don't know if it shows your vote, but it's like who you are, what party you're registered for, and when the last time you voted was. And I know that Texas has turned that over. Some states have and some states haven't. I don't know what that means for voter security in the future though. Because one of the what makes the secret ballot necessary is that you should be able to go into that voting booth and you're not voting what your parents want you to vote. You're not voting what your significant other wants you to vote. You're voting how you want, like the person that you want to choose. And if you are being intimidated or you are feeling like you're being watched, that kind of changes that. We also get direct primaries, which we talked about yesterday when Jacob asked, well, how does Donald Trump and Kamala Harris end up on the ballot? Well, direct primaries, right? In fact, in April, we'll have a direct primary for the governor of Texas. Greg Abbott is running for re-election, but there's also, I don't know, 5 or 10 people that are challenging him, some from either party, some Republicans, some Democrats. We will go in April and vote on which of those people we want to be the 2 front runners. Yes?
Who's Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz is a senator. So we have 2 senators. It's Ted Cruz and John Cornyn. Both of them are running for actually everybody in the Senate, I believe, is up for re-election this year.
You can run as many times as you want.
There is no term limits on the Senate. And in Texas, there's no term limits on the governor. Some states do have a term limit, but Texas does not. And as far as the Senate or House of Representatives, there is no term limit. That's how you get people like Nancy Pelosi that served, 50 years? It was a long dang time. Who was the other one? Bernie Sanders, I think, has been in this Congress for 50 years. Joe Biden was in Congress for 50 years before he became vice president, or 40 years. That's how you get people that have been in our government for a ridiculous amount of time. Yes.
How does one begin to get into the government? Like, is there like
It's a lot of
school?
networking. No, you don't have to have any kind of education. There's no educational requirement.
That makes sense.
So if I become friends with the right people, then
It's who you know. A lot of people start local, right? So you network in your local area. Like I'm gonna use Gabe Adame as an example. He's the mayor, right? But he's young. Or we could say Dan Davis out in Manville. That guy's going places too. They start local, Dan Davis.
how do you know he's going places?
He's very ambitious. Very ambitious. And he's very much out in the public. He's on social media like every day. He posts a lot about what's happening in Manville.
Oh, wow.
He's very, very active
What's his
politically.
name?
Dan Davis. So let's say you start there, right? You start at Dan Davis, you start as Gabe Adame, and you decide that after you've served your community, you have a good track record. For Dan Davis, he's gonna be like, look how much I grew Manville, right? We went from this little one light town to this huge, not huge, but to this large metropolis. We brought in all of this extra money. The economy is booming here, and people are like, this guy knows what he's doing. Then he starts thinking, maybe I should run for a Senate seat, or maybe I should run for a state representative seat. That they kind of climb up that ladder. But there is no like, you can go to school for political science. You can get a poli-sci degree.
Would that help you in any
It would help. I would think so. I mean, I think they should all be required to have some education. I think it's a little crazy that you can have a. Yeah, that's Dan Davis.
I can't say.
That's
Oh,
a little bit
dang.
Is that you?
So I'm actually
Is that you?
Oh, I thought you were saying he was holding you when you were. Oh, okay.
Who's ours? Ours is Gabe Adame.
David. That's kind of how that goes.
Once he
Something
comes
like
along,
that.
he'll be going places.
We're almost done, y'all. We're almost done. Okay, 17th Amendment. This was another one of those things that the Populist Party had wanted. And the Populist Party wanted for senators to be elected by popular vote rather than by the state legislature. So rather than having Greg Abbott, who's the governor, or his like legislature that works underneath him, rather than having him choose who our senators are, we vote for those people. And right now, that's Ted Cruz and John Cornyn. I think both of them are running for their own seats again. So they're both running for re-election. You get to go out, well, you guys might not be. If you're 18 by this November, you'll be able to vote in this election, these midterm elections. If not, you'll be able to vote in the next presidential election.
You can vote.
Is your birthday?
October.
Yeah, there you go.
All right,
I didn't remember his birthday. So.
state laws.
It doesn't make sense.
Progress we make on the state level. State laws help to regulate housing conditions in urban areas, so things like tenements. I don't know if y'all know this, but if you ever build a house in Brazoria County, every room in your house has to have windows, or at least one window. Every room obviously has to have a door to the interior or exterior of the home, one or the other. Residential buildings like apartments have to have sprinkler systems and fire alarms. There's a lot that goes into housing regulation as a result of Jacob Reese's work exposing how the other half lives. In 1906, child labor is abolished. Yes,
For the house, you said all of them, what if you build your own house on your
you still have to have a permit. Yeah, and you
So you have to have windows in every room.
if you do it legally, like you go through the county to get a permit, they have to see your house plans and approve of them. Yes.
So, kind of, I raised my hand, so I'm not gonna do that. So, I know you said in.
You can finish. So, 1906, child labor, Jacob. Child labor is abolished, and then it's abolished at the federal level maybe like a year or two later. Regulated working conditions in factories, particularly safety conditions. So when we watched that Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, that changed things like having to have sprinklers, doors have to open to the outdoors. If y'all go to a business, any business in Alvin, almost every one of them has a sticker on the door that says this door must remain unlocked during business hours, which to the normal person, you're like, duh, why wouldn't the door be unlocked? That Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire is why. Yes.
Is it garage or?
Limited hours women could work.
There's literally a huge door that opens up, I'm pretty sure that like counts as a
It can
window.
be transformed into a room, but it is not considered a room for purposes of appraisal. I don't know and I don't care.
What about?
Okay, moving on.
What about a closet?
Let me finish. Women's work hours are limited, not limited like women can't work, but to help bring down the number of hours that women are working. And states are forced to compensate injured workers. If I get hurt on the job and it's a complete accident, like I'm not doing anything stupid, I just get hurt, Alvin Independent School District has to compensate me. I have to be paid for time that I'm healing, they pay for the doctor's visit, whatever the case may be. That's part of workplace safety standards.
What's the
Like, let's say that
difference?
I'm out in the hallway and some kid punches me in the face. That happened to Miss Blatt like 2 years ago. The school district is responsible for their care. While
Why don't you just hold on?
We could work something out.
you're also going to jail for a felony, by the way. Don't get any ideas.
Okay, never mind.
Huh?
We could work,
It's all come too far.
we could work.
Do you think attention to
Let me finish, please. I need you to write down this. Hey, listen, if I'm talking and y'all are trying to talk over me, that starts to make me real irritated. The spoils system. We haven't really talked about this. We did talk about political machines, but one of the other things that is happening in city governments is people get elected to office and then they hire their friends. The friends have no experience at all in the job that they're being hired to do. And what that creates is chaos because you have people running public offices or public services that are not qualified to do that particular job. That is called patronage or the spoils system. It is essentially like, hey man, thanks for getting me elected. You're now the principal of Alvin High School. Like what? You haven't even finished high school yet. Hold on, let me get through this and then I'll answer your question.
example of that.
This is known as the Pendleton Act, or the Pendleton Act undoes the spoil system. The Pendleton Act says that if you're going to be a civil servant, meaning that you're going to work in a government position that deals with the public or services for the public, you must take a civil service exam, and you're essentially appointed based on merit, on how well you qualify for the job, not necessarily who you know.
Wait, so they do have to take a test to become like?
In most, this is in state government, yeah, or local. I mean, do they really still do it anymore? I don't know. But this, at the time, yes. Okay, what was your example?
Andrew Jackson